What's going on, everybody? This is Brian Mazique of the Fight Guys, and I'm also a Forbes contributor. And we are going to talk about UFC 249. It just wrapped less than 30 minutes ago, I would say. And we're going to go over this entire card. And obviously, if you hadn't learned or hadn't seen as of yet, the new UFC interim lightweight champion is Justin Gaethje. He pulled off a very impressive victory over Tony Ferguson on on Saturday night at a fanless VyStar Memorial, a Veterans Memorial Coliseum. And so we're going to get into that ASAP. First and foremost, I'm hoping that if you get an opportunity, if you have not liked this video as of yet, please go right ahead and do that now. And make sure also that you go ahead and share it. I'm going to try to give people a little bit more time to get in here so that they can get a chance to see and go over the entire fight card with us. As I said, I am going to go over the whole card, so not just part of it. Obviously, we know who um, who won the main event, but we're going to go over the entire card just so we can uh, kind of do it in totality, I should say. It was, I won't say that this was a spectacular card. I wouldn't say that. I would say that it was pretty entertaining, a little bit different for sure when you are watching a major event like this without any fans present. So definitely something that you know what it felt like? It felt like felt like you were watching the preliminary cards for the whole fight for in terms of from a sound standpoint, because if you're used to watching UFC events, you know how it sounds like early in the event where it's hardly no fans there, so you're kind of used to that. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure that we share this right now on social media. So let's jump into our uh, our first fight of the evening, and this was Ryan Spann taking on Sam Alvey. Now, Ryan Spann got the split decision here, and I'm going to tell you something. Just overall, I really wasn't super impressed with what I saw from Ryan Spann, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought that we would have a far better performance for him. Now he did get the split decision victory, and I want to give a lot of credit to Sam Alvey for the way he performed. But my main takeaway after seeing this fight was that Ryan Spann is really not ready to contend. I'm not sure if he ever will be at this point. He looks the part, 6'5", 205 pounds. Looks like he might blow up to about 230, 235 by the time fight night rolls around. But there's a lot of gaffes there from a striking standpoint. Leaves himself open quite a bit. Alvey is tough, as I don't know what he took a couple good shots here and there, and but I would say overall he got outstruck and kind of fought off some takedowns early in the fight. This is a tough loss for him. I think it's four losses in a row. And coming into this, I was thinking that if Sam Alvey was to lose again in this particular fight, I would have to say he's looking at like, maybe getting released. But I felt that he was impressive enough in defeat, right, to at least garner being able to stay on the roster. Ryan Spann, now I think Ryan Spann's on like an 8 fight winning streak, but this was just not one of those performances where you look and you're like, man, this guy really. I felt like he was set up where this could have been a fight where you're like looking to elevate Ryan Spann, and I just didn't see that come through at all in this particular fight. But I mean, early in the first round, Ryan Spann nearly got the submission. He had a triangle chokehold, standing triangle choke. As you can look at the look on Sam Alvey's face, he thought. I mean, we all thought that he was in some serious trouble here, but he was able to get out of it. It took, like I said, it took some good shots from Ryan Spann. Just couldn't he couldn't ever really find his footing into the third round when he did land a nice head kick, and he also dazed Ryan Spann with a counter right hand that he had been throwing. I would say most of the fight, you could tell he was trying to set it up. So he did have Spann hurt badly in the third round, which is how this ended up being a split decision because there was a close round there in the second. So, like I said, it was just some shaky points in there for me for Ryan Spann, and I just don't think that he was nearly as impressive as I would have thought he might be against an opponent that I thought if you're talking about being a contender when you face Sam Alvey, I think that not to disrespect him, but a real legitimate contender at this stage of Ryan Spann's career, I think should have handled Sam Alvey a little bit better than he did. All right, let's go into the second fight of the night. This one was I'm going to tell you something. Bryce Mitchell, he needs to get a new nickname. His nickname needs to be TNT, Twisters and Triangles. I mean, he won by a twister in his last fight. I think it was against Matt Sales. So we all know how rare a twister is as a submission hold. My man not only won by a twister this in his last fight, in this particular fight here, he set up, I would say, he had an opportunity maybe to get 6 or 7 different twisters. I've never seen any fighter, male or female, be able to maneuver their way into a possible twister as often as Bryce Mitchell in my life. It was just crazy. He is truly, in my opinion, one of the most promising young grapplers in the world. He improved to 13-0 with this victory. I mean, this was complete grappling dominance for 15 minutes. And what makes that performance even more impressive is because Charles Rosa is a legitimate black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but he looked completely outclassed by Brian Mitchell. To Charles Rosa's credit, he was able to fight off. I mean, I'm talking about a myriad of submission attempts. He was able to fight them off, but he really spent the entire fight just trying to survive, never able to get to a place where he could offer any sort of offense at all. Like I said, it was a masterful performance by Bryce Mitchell. If you're showing up now and you're making comments in the comment section, I will be able to go ahead and take a look at those comments and respond to you from there at that point. Right now, I can't do it because the way we're set up now, I can't actually see the comments at the same time, but I will be going in and answering as many questions as I can once we actually finish going through the recaps here for each of these fights. So let's jump to a third fight of the night, which was Vicente Luque winning by a third round TKO against Nico Price. I think everybody knew that this had the potential to be a really exciting fight, and it really did not disappoint. I mean, these guys kind of just traded the entire time. I thought they had a great opportunity to win fight of the night. We're still waiting to see who actually is going to get it. It has I mean, the final fight of the main event has a chance to take it away. I kind of think they lean towards giving the main event or the pay-per-view card guys some of these bonuses, just like kind of off GP. I don't know, but sometimes it does seem like they do that. And some of the guys on the prelims, some of the guys and girls on the prelims, I think get slighted in that way, because there've been plenty of times where I have looked and I've thought that a person or a fight on the prelims was more deserving of one of those bonuses, and they didn't get it, and it was kind of like they defaulted to a main carder. But this fight was definitely right there in the conversation, possibly getting a fight of the night. Price is the kind of fighter, man, who he's going to test everybody. He runs into a skill gap, I think, though, from a striking standpoint. And while his arms are long and he's very tough, he's a little bit too labored in his exchanges, and he tends to telegraph some of his shots. Now that said, he did catch Vicente Luque a few times, but Vicente Luque's overall tighter striking, just tighter application of the striking game is what was the difference. And I mean, he's such a great striker. The only thing I will say about Luque from a stand-up standpoint is I just think he eats entirely too many shots. I mean, he takes way too many shots. If you look at his strikes absorbed per minute, you're like, man, how can a guy who is so good on his feet tend to eat as many strikes as he does? And he does. He's a tough guy, but I think he eats a little bit too many of them. I think that was one of the reasons why he could not knock off Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in his last fight. But he did a great job in this one. It was a nasty left hook that did this to, look at Nico Price's eye. This is the result of that left hook that landed, that ended up leading to the TKO in the third round. The doctor stepped in and basically said, he flat can't see out of the eye. So they had to stop the fight. I really didn't have any issue at all with the stoppage. I thought it was a good one. I mean, just take a look at the guy's eye. I mean, that's a pretty messy eye, And it's not just about the blood, it's about the location of the cut. The cut is like right on the eyelid. So he's hardly, you can't have a cut in a much worse place than he had it. So I thought it was a just stoppage. Strong performance for Vicente Luque, but I do think he needs to show up the striking defense, more head movement, and I feel like he would maybe be able to go to the next level. I just don't know if it's too late for him at this point. Been around for a while, a little bit of a late bloomer, but yeah, that's a hole in the game in my opinion. The next fight was Carla Esparza winning this was a really oddly scored fight. She took a split decision over Michelle Waterson. Um, you'll very rarely see a fight scored the way this one was, right? One judge had it 30-27 for Esparza. Another judge had it 29-28 for Esparza. But a third judge had it 30-27 for Waterson. So one judge thought that Waterson won every round. Another judge thought Esparza won every round. It just usually you don't see that level of a disparity there. But that's what we saw. I thought Esparza did deserve to win the fight. And here's the reason why I picked Esparza to win from the beginning. I think that Waterson's lack of power is her biggest issue because she's a very skilled striker, uses kicks very well, just quickness overall. But she really can't finish. And because she can't finish and she has to play like almost like this point fighting style game, it's tough on her. Now, she is a good grappler, but when she runs into someone like Esparza, whose grappling game, as I said, I believed was a notch ahead of hers, and I think the real difference in this fight was a takedown. I think that's what happened. She ran into a grappler who ultimately ends up grinding out a decision against her. Or she faces a striker of the caliber of Joanna Jędrzejczyk, and she's not able really to win that game either. So I think she's in a tough situation just overall because I do think she is maximizing her skill set. She's just never going to be a power striker. She just does not have that as a part of her game. But as it is, she's very talented. She can give just about anybody a tough fight. But I think she's at this place where she's really good at most things and not exceptional at any particular part of the game. And I think that's the reason why she ends up in so many close decisions and then sometimes coming up on the short end of the stick. She did have her moments, I thought, in the fight. But I thought one of the biggest problems, as I said, was once that fight went to the ground, Carla Esparza just had the edge, and that was what enabled her to kind of eke out the decision. All right, the next fight was Alexei Olynyk against Fabricio Werdum. This was actually the first fight on the card that I did not properly predict, right? So I had Werdum winning, and I thought it would be a tough fight. I thought it would go to the decision, and it did. I'm going to tell you, though, I was really impressed with the way Olynyk looked in the fight from a physical standpoint. He was in excellent shape. He had great cardio, constantly coming forward. I did score the fight for Werdum, but I don't think that it was like a robbery or anything at all. I think he came forward. I think he came forward in the second round. I thought he got started securing takedowns in the second and third. I scored basically the second and the third round for Werdum, and I obviously scored the first round for Olynyk. I felt he dominated, really just really imposed his will from a striking standpoint. But it it was just tough for Werdum. It was just tough for Werdum to kind of make up what happened in the first round. And there was a moment there in the second where even though Olynyk had been taken down, he started to do well on the feet. So I think that swayed two of the judges to go his way for that round. So with the first and the second in the bag, he ends up winning that. But clearly, I thought Werdum won the third round. So if you look at it, Werdum was off for 2 years because he had popped for a banned substance, so he hadn't fought in 2 years. Olynyk had fought as early as January. Olynyk is in his 40s, been around for I don't know how long. But this was a really interesting fight because both of these guys were facing someone who, from a grappling standpoint, this was like the only people they'll ever face that is anywhere within their their stratosphere on the ground, right? So I do think that Werdum proved to be superior, the superior grappler, superior submissions guy, even though Olynyk was able to escape. He almost had an Americana put on him, a straight armbar it was. He was able to escape that submission hold. But I do think Werdum showed himself to be better as far as a grappler. But I think if you look at what happened with Olynyk and you look at the shape that he was in, most of the opponents that he'll face moving forward will not be nearly the grappler that Werdum is. And if he comes in with the same level of cardio that he showed on Saturday night against other heavyweights, I don't know. He might be in for a bit of a rebirth with whatever he's done from a conditioning standpoint, because this was the best I'd seen Olynyk look in I don't know how long. I'm talking about even with the Ezekiel chokes, all of that. Overall, as a complete mixed martial artist, this was the best I'd seen him look. So Werdum definitely looked flabby and soft, like he had been off for 2 years. So we'll see if he can get himself into a little bit better condition. But it was a good fight, not one I felt overly upset about predicting incorrectly. The next fight was Anthony Showtime Pettis against Donald Cerrone. You know what I'm gonna say? I'm gonna say Donald Cerrone did not get the win. Obviously, he lost a unanimous decision. It was close, but entertaining fight overall. I was very happy and pleased with what Donald Cerrone, the effort that he put in. After being questioned about quitting and not giving his all against Conor McGregor, I felt that the way he performed against Pettis, the effort that he put in, showed he was hungry for this victory. He came up a little bit short. I thought it was close. It really could have gone either way. Cerrone, I thought maybe did the best as far as wrestling. He also had a tremendous head kick that he called Anthony Pettis with in the third round that Pettis took like a champ. But I thought those two things were in Cerrone's favor. But I thought that most of the striking throughout every other part of the fight, I thought was in Pettis' favor. He appeared to do more damage with the shots that he did land. And because of that, I thought that the right guy got the decision. But I can certainly understand why Cerrone may have felt like he didn't get the benefit of the doubt. Cerrone's not on a good pace right now in his career. I mean, I think this is 4 consecutive losses. At least he didn't get stopped this time because he's been getting beaten up in fights prior to this one. So he didn't get stopped. I don't know, man. I really don't know what to say about Cerrone at this point. I don't think he is a guy who is capable of winning a championship at this point. So I don't know if, for someone who has fought as long as he's fought, done the things that he's done, to me, the only other thing left to do in the game is to win a championship. And if you're at a point where that's probably not realistic, I'm wondering what the motivation is. Obviously, money is always a factor, but I'm wondering what else is the motivation for him at this point. But took another loss on Saturday, and we'll see what happens with Pettis moving forward. It looks like at this point in his career, 170 pounds is going to be his weight class. So he looks strong there. So we'll see what happens for him next. The next fight was the opening of the main card, and it was big bags of trash. Hot, burling, rolling trash. Greg Hardy against Yorgan DeCastro. This was one of my upset picks. I felt that Yorgan DeCastro had a chance to win this fight. And if you watched it, he did have a chance to win the fight. He was bothering Greg Hardy with leg kicks, which is what I called in my preview before the fight. Unfortunately, he seemed to have injured his toe or something like that in the second round. And I know that sounds bad, but that's exactly what happened. He seemed to have injured his toe, and he literally stopped throwing anything. I mean, he wouldn't even throw a dirty look at Greg Hardy after his toe. Whatever happened to his toe, must have been really bad. Because, and if I sound a little upset, I might be, because I called him winning this upset, and I felt that he was in a position where he could have gotten it done. I thought he was clearly the more advanced striker. He was giving up a lot of size for sure. But the leg kicks I thought were a real factor. And to be totally honest, Greg Hardy really didn't do any real damage in the fight from his own action. He did press the fight and he made the fight and he totally deserved the win because he was the one trying to actually make the fight. But he didn't really do anything like damage wise to Yorgan DeCastro. So I really feel this, and I saw this. I saw a few people from MMA media saying the same thing. Yorgan DeCastro could have won this fight. He just simply stopped. It just simply stopped. His level of inactivity. I mean, if I don't believe Herb Dean was the referee for this, but if he had been, Herb Dean, one of his very favorite things to say is, "I'm going to give you a timidity warning." Yorgan DeCastro needed a timidity warning in the worst way because it was just I had no idea what was going on. I literally turned to my wife and said, "I don't think he wants to win anymore." Because he wasn't even tired. Because you might look at a heavyweight, especially a heavyweight with the body mold that Yorgan DeCastro has. You might be like, "Oh man, he looks like he's getting winded." He wasn't tired. It was his toe. And I'm a little dumbfounded by the toe thing. But it is what it is. Let's move on to the next fight on the main card, and this one was fought with mean spirits. Jeremy Stevens gets, destructively KO'd in the second round by Calvin Kattar. Calvin Kattar caught, that an elbow is nasty when it's so short and quick that you think it's a punch. That's exactly what happened. It was a counter right elbow that caught Jeremy Stevens flush on the chin. Jeremy Stevens immediately went back. A guy is gotten hit really hard and is kind of out of it when they fall backwards and one of their legs is behind them. His right leg and foot was like behind his butt momentarily. Calvin Kattar pounces, slices him open with a left elbow. Just filth. Filth, flarn, filth. It was bad. And ultimately the fight gets stopped right after that. But the funny thing is, the first round, Jeremy Stevens came out like a house of fire, just coming directly at Calvin Kattar. And I would venture to say I think he might have won that first round. But in the second round, Kattar seemed to get his bearings about him. He was landing flush even before the knockout shot came, which this is it right here. Look how flush this elbow catches Jeremy Stevens dead on the chin. Just knocked him silly after with that shot. So it was really an impressive performance for Kattar. In the post-fight interview, though, you kind of got a little bit of an indication of Calvin Kattar being upset, and I'll give you a little bit of a background on it in case you don't know. Jeremy Stevens was the only fighter to miss weight for this particular event. He didn't just miss weight; he missed weight by 4.5 pounds, 4.5 or 4.6 pounds. Now that's already an egregious amount by which to miss weight. Not only did he miss weight by that much, he was the first guy on the scale and he missed weight by that much. Now here's why Calvin Kattar and other fighters may be so irritated by that. If you know that you're struggling to make weight, most fighters will try to wait until the last minute. They're going to try and go into the sauna. They're going to try to run. They're going to try to do whatever they can do to try to make weight. Obviously, you want to be safe. You don't want to put yourself in danger because the biggest danger in combat sports is actually not the punishment that people take. It's the weight cuts and the things that you put yourself through during a weight cut. I've spoken with my partner Peter Kahn, who has spoken directly with nutritionists who specialize in dealing with athletes, and they will tell you that part of the whole thing is being hydrated. When you are dehydrated and you go in and you take punishment, it leaves you more susceptible to those serious injuries that we see in boxing mostly. So I'm not trying to diminutize or to act as if not wanting to put yourself through all kinds of things to make weight is something that should just be like, oh yeah, you should just suck it up and go through it. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is when you're gonna miss weight by that much and then you just hop on the scale at the beginning like, oh well, no, they're not gonna replace me anyway. We're in the middle of a pandemic. It doesn't matter if I miss weight. That's kind of the way that comes off. And Calvin Kattar took that personally, and he took it out on Jeremy Stevens' chin. So Jeremy Stevens is in a tough situation too. He's now lost 4 fights in a row. Now, granted, he has lost to great fighters: Zabit Magomedsharipov, Jose Aldo, Yair Rodriguez. Well, it's technically he hasn't had a win in. I think he hasn't had a win in 4 fights in a row, or is it 5 fights in a row? I'll confirm it in a second. He hasn't had a win in his last 5 fights. So you go back to July 2018, he was stopped by Jose Aldo, body shot led to that. Zabit Magomedsharipov beats him by unanimous decision in March of 2019. September 2019, he bows out because of an accidental eye poke for Yair Rodriguez. A lot of people would, say that he could have continued. He didn't. Came back and fights Yair Rodriguez in the following month and loses a unanimous decision. And then now on Saturday night, you get knocked out by Calvin Kattar. He hasn't won a fight since February of 2018. Now, I know Jeremy Stevens is a big-time fan favorite, and he has this crowd-pleasing style, but he is 33 years old. He's going to turn 34 later this month, and he's now 28-18. He's another guy. At this point in his career, you got to ask yourself, right? What are you still fighting for in terms of what most people in his situation, they're fighting for to win a championship? Does he still believe he has a realistic chance to win a championship? I don't know. I don't think he does. If I'm just being real, I don't think he does. So I don't know. I don't know what happens, but 5-fight winless streak is not a good look for anybody. All right, let's go on to the next fight, and this one was mercy. Francis Ngannou against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And if you went to the bathroom, if you answered the phone because your mama was calling, I don't care what you did. If it took longer than 20 seconds, you missed this fight. Francis Ngannou. First of all, here's the thing, man. Let me just say this. I have no idea who helped devise Jairzinho Rozenstruik's game plan for this fight, but whoever did it should not be devising any more game plans. He literally walked up into this fight against a guy like Francis Ngannou, who is already proven to be an absolute wrecking machine. And I understand that Jairzinho Rozenstruik had the same type of, he obviously saw himself in the same vein. He had been knocking guys out. He snatched victory from the jaws of defeat in his last fight against Alistair Overeem with a knockout with just 4 seconds left on the clock. I get it. But you're also a smaller man, and I don't know who measured these guys and said they're both 6'4". I don't know on what planet these guys are the same height. If you saw them at the face-off, you could see Francis Ngannou is almost a whole head taller than Jairzinho Rozenstruik. So they're not the same height. Ngannou had a huge edge from a reach standpoint, and it was very clear. So they get the winging shots inside. Now, I'm stretching this out longer than this whole fight, essentially. Ngannou lands a nasty left hand that you can see kind of here landing. And I'm telling you, Jairzinho Rozenstruik, I don't know. We haven't seen him get hit. Well, I did actually. Overeem hit him with some good shots. And he certainly looks to be the sturdy man, right? Not when Ngannou hits you. When Ngannou hits you, you go night. And this is what happens. You're ending up sitting on your butt looking at the doctor telling him what day it is. And I just don't understand why Jairzinho Rozenstruik just was not employing hardly any movement. He did throw a leg kick, which I thought was a good idea. But when the rush came, I called this before the fight. I said, watch what Jairzinho Rozenstruik does during exchanges. I said he leans straight back and he tries to avoid the shots and he's trying to land like that because he's so used to when I connect, the guy goes away. And most people don't want to be inside my power. But he's fighting a guy who was bigger and longer and even stronger, and he's basically keeping his head on the center line and moving straight back. Almost every single striking coach will ever tell you that leaning straight back and keeping your head on the center line is a recipe for getting hit. No left-right head movement at all, no dipping out of the way, nothing. Stay straight there and lean straight back. It's a very bad habit, especially against a puncher, big, long puncher like Ngannou. And this is what we saw, 20 seconds. Let's think about this for a second. In Ngannou's last 4 fights, he has knocked out Cain Velasquez, Curtis Blades, Junior Dos Santos, and Jairzinho Rozenstruik. And all of those fights together have taken a combined 2 minutes and 42 seconds. So he has knocked out basically the best fighters in the heavyweight division, sans Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic, in less than a round combined. So when you hear Francis Ngannou doing his post-fight interview and he appears to be a bit irritated and feels like he's maybe a little bit disrespected, well, this is kind of why. This is kind of why, because he feels as though he's obviously done enough to warrant getting more respect than he's getting. And so I totally understand him, why he's a little upset. But this was an absolute demolition is what this was. This was a demolition. All right, let's look at our next fight, which was the co-main event, Henry Cejudo against Dominick Cruz. I'm going to come right out and tell you guys, yes, this was my upset pick. I thought Dominick Cruz's movement could provide him an opportunity to win this fight. In the first round, I thought he got completely outfought. I thought Henry Cejudo's leg kicks really controlled the action. I thought in the second round, which is where he got stopped, I thought he was starting to find his range a little bit. I thought he was starting to land some punches, and it looked like Cejudo might be slowing down himself. But I think that Cruz got a little bit over aggressive on the inside, and he ate a knee right to the face that dropped him. He went back, fell down. He wasn't completely out. But here's the issue, right? And he really protested this stoppage. But here's what happened. Cejudo gets directly on his back, and he starts firing shots to finish the fight. He's hitting pretty much all of them are hitting him in the face. All of them are hitting Dominick in the face. Dominick is not covering up. Instead, he has his arms on the mat like this, and he's trying to get up. And meanwhile, he's taking him in the face. So Keith Peterson, which I think is the referee for this particular fight, is moving around, and he's seeing punch after punch landing. Now, Dominick, not completely just like out of sorts yet, but he's taking repeated shots, and he's not firing back. So he stops the fight. And Dominick Cruz immediately starts to protest, but you can't take 12 unanswered shots without firing back or without covering up and expect the fight not to get stopped. So I don't understand that. Then in his post-fight interview, and we're going to get to the biggest part of the post-fight interview because there's a whole big, huge story in this regard beyond this. But in the post-fight interview, Dominick says, I told the referee, let me take shots. Let me, if I'm going to get stopped, let me get knocked completely out. That's not how this works. I don't even understand why fighters still say stuff like that. Like, the referee is in there to protect the fighter from themselves. Most of these guys and girls are so tough that they would just take shot after shot after shot and have whatever happen, and they just have to go out. I mean, we heard another just completely ridiculous comment from Justin Gaethje in the main event, and I'm going to talk about that when we get there. Most fighters would just take. The referee's purpose and responsibility is to protect you from yourself. So I understand that you're saying that you want to continue to take these shots, but the referee doesn't take instructions from the fighter on how he wants to be reffed. The referee has to referee the fight the way he or she does, according to what is in the best interest of the safety of the fighter. So you telling us that you told the referee specifically to dude, that's not how it goes. That's not how it goes. That's like saying I told LeBron went and told the referee how he wanted fouls called. I told the referee already I only want him to call fouls if I'm going to my left. If I'm going to my right, you don't call it. Just let me play on. No, bro, you don't get a chance to tell us you don't get a chance to tell the referee how to call the fight. And so I thought that was pretty ridiculous. As far as Cejudo, he announced his retirement during the post-fight interview. Now, he's 34 years old. He talked about all the things he's done, which he has done a lot. He can definitely make an argument that he is the greatest combat sports athlete of all time. He's an Olympic gold medalist. He's won the UFC men's flyweight championship, the men's bantamweight championship. Who else in the world has won an Olympic gold medal, beaten Demetrius Johnson, Dominic Cruz, and TJ Dillashaw, and Marlon Moraes? Nobody. Only Henry Cejudo. He's the only guy who has ever done all of that stuff. Even though I did score the DJ fight for DJ, but it's okay. Either way, he's technically, officially, he's still done these things. So he said that he was retiring. Obviously, you always take combat sports retirements with a grain of salt. Henry has talked about how he wants the big money and that sort of thing. I think what Cejudo just doesn't understand, and I think he's done about as well as he can do with being a fighter in the United States who is subject to size bias. Just in the United States just pretty much just never respects the lower weight classes as much as they should. They just don't. It's the biggest reason, one of the biggest reasons why Demetrius Johnson never got the credit that he deserved when he was champion for what seemed like forever. It's the reason why. This is why this happens. So, Cejudo saying he wants these big paydays. Well, and then, he's tried to make himself like this, polarizing star, and it just kind of falls flat. Everybody knows he's a great fighter, but this thing of trying to take himself to the next level just hasn't worked. So I don't know if this is real or what it is. But if he never fights again, never throws another punch, he's automatically a Hall of Famer already. He doesn't have to do anything else. Speaking of Hall of Fame, Georgia St. Pierre's Hall of Fame induction was announced on Saturday night, which is pretty awesome. Would have been really cool if that announcement had come in front of a live crowd. I almost feel like you maybe should have waited for that or something. I don't know, but it was pretty cool that he's going in. But yeah, that's what Cejudo said after the fight. So let's go into our last fight, and once I go through this, I'll go and look at the comments and see if we have anyone talking there. Main event: Justin Gaethje just flat beat Tony Ferguson up. There is really no other way. I can start talking a bunch of technical stuff and how Justin Gaethje's punches were much tighter on on much more of a straight line. How maybe Tony Ferguson had some wasted movement, and the diversions and all the different traps that he generally sets for his opponents didn't work against Justin Gaethje, who just stayed disciplined and controlled. I could go into all of that, but the fact of the matter is, Justin Gaethje beat Tony Ferguson up. I mean, he beat him up, with the exception of an uppercut that landed on Justin Gaethje's chin at the end of the second round that dropped Gaethje. Really, Tony didn't have any moments at all on this night. I mean, he just got beat up. The best moment that you can say that Tony Ferguson had throughout the entire night was that he took more punishment than I maybe have seen any person take over the course of nearly 25 minutes. Now, I did talk about this on an episode of The Fight Guys that I felt that the fight would go over 4.5 rounds. It did. It was almost at the end of the fifth round. So it did get over the 4.5 rounds. So that was still a solid bet. But yeah, was a beatdown. It was an absolute beatdown. Gaethje did win the interim championship with the victory, but during his post-fight interview, he threw the belt on the mat. Joe Rogan said, "Why'd you do that? You don't want that thing on you?" And he was like, "No, I'm waiting on the real one." And I'm gonna say something, right? I've always seen Justin Gaethje talk like, "Oh, I'm in it for the warrior. I'm in it. I'm a warrior. That's why I fight for. It's all about that. I don't care about belts and all that stuff." I've heard him say stuff like that, and just kind of give off that demeanor. But I'm gonna tell you, man, he seems so focused. This was the best we've all seen Justin Gaethje look great and put on some fantastic fights, but this was the absolute best I've ever seen him look. I mean, he was slipping shots. He got caught, of course, with that shot at the end. He was slipping shots, and his punches were so accurate and so crisp, so hard. If I will give Tony some criticism for just his approach in this fight, it was the fact that he just flat didn't even bother to go for a takedown. I mean, he tried one unorthodox roll at the end there in the fifth round and got nothing but air to try to, get the fight to change levels. But he just never tried to change levels. And I thought it was pretty clear through maybe midway through the third round that he just was not going to win the striking battle. So I thought he needed to make an adjustment, and he just flat didn't. But you see that a lot when you got guys who are on long winning streaks. Won 12 fights in a row, you start to get this feeling or this aura of invincibility, and you find out, that you still can lose. And it just seemed like Tony just wasn't willing to accept the fact that as a striker, he just was getting blasted and he needed to go to something different, and he just didn't have anything else. He looked to be a step slow. I don't know if it was the layoff. I don't know if it was the fact that he was mentally prepared for Habib, which I had talked about. I don't know what it was. Immediately after the fight, I was a little bit disappointed because Justin Gaethje walked over to Tony Ferguson and tried to, hug him and congratulate him, and Tony Ferguson literally pushed him off. And I was like, "Oh, bro, really?" Now, thankfully, moments later, he, kind of got himself together, and I give him obviously a pass for that because, it was in the heat of the battle. You just lost, and I'm gonna kind of give you a picture of what Tony Ferguson's frustration might look like, right? He's battled through all these injuries. He's had 5 fights signed with Habib Nurmagomedov, and all 5 of them have been canceled. He wanted to fight McGregor. McGregor didn't want to fight or couldn't fight. He had all different things going on. You can make the argument that Tony should have been a champion already, or at least had gotten an opportunity to fight for a championship. He had never gotten that opportunity. He's was the interim champion. He was going and trying to get the second interim championship. Just a really frustrating grind, and to have this fight set up with Nurmagomedov and then get the opponent changed, get a really tough guy like Justin Gaethje in there, and then to lose, to get stopped too. It's a lot. It was a lot. So I definitely give him, a pardon for the way he behaved immediately after, and even some of the lightweight excuses that he gave in the post-fight interview. But he did at least stay for it. And I've seen plenty of guys and girls just completely dip for the post-fight interview, and he didn't do that. So he deserves some credit for that for sure. But he got beat up. He got beat up on Saturday. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does next, where he is, what happens with him after this. But I don't really want to see any other fight in the lightweight division besides Gaethje Nurmagomedov. I don't care anything about what McGregor's talking about. As far as I'm concerned, he can go up to 170 and be there. I don't really have a great interest in seeing Nurmagomedov McGregor again. I mean, I'm not going to say I wouldn't watch it, and I'm not going to cover it. I am. But if you ask me, the 155-pound fight that I most want to see is Gaethje against Nurmagomedov. I wouldn't necessarily mind seeing Gaethje McGregor, though. I'm not going to lie. I wouldn't mind seeing that. I would just love to see how McGregor reacts to a guy like Gaethje. I mean, whoo, that's something there. That's at this point, Gaethje against just about everybody just makes me go, woo. I mean, I got to call Ric Flair out, just automatically. So it could be interesting. Gaethje has literally injected some new type of everything into this whole thing. You know what I'm interested in seeing? I'm interested in seeing on Monday or Tuesday, whenever, or maybe it's Wednesday, whenever the next ratings, pound for pound ratings come out for the UFC, what is going to be said? Like, where will Gaethje be? Because you just beat Tony Ferguson, and that's significant. So I'm wondering where that's going to be. So that's what I got for the recaps. I'm going to go head over here and I'm going to start looking at some of the stuff. Hopefully, maybe you guys have been saying here in the chat here. My man Ness Mendoza is here. It's Fight O'Clock. What's going on, man? I hope you enjoyed the fight. Hope you're enjoying the recap here as well. We got Lucas Brannigan. You were watching from Ireland. That is cool. What did you think about it? Are you a McGregor fan? I don't automatically assume that everybody in Ireland is a McGregor fan. I don't know if you are. If you are, do you think that what do you think about McGregor and Justin Gaethje? I would love to know what you think. Were you impressed by what you saw from Gaethje? And but Ness, I haven't seen you around in a minute, man. I appreciate you coming back and popping in with us and checking out the recap. I don't know if you got an opportunity to watch tonight, But if you did, I'm wondering what you thought of overall of the card, of the return of the UFC, return of sports, period, honestly. Um, I was a little bit bummed out for sure when I saw that, Jacare tested positive along with the two cornermen. That definitely was a bit of a bummer because I told somebody I was rooting for the UFC to uh, have this event go over without a hitch and to hopefully be something that was kind of like, hey, we're leading the charge, leading the sports charge into, just leading the charge for the country, and having sports kind of follow behind that. But didn't seem necessarily that happened. So, um, because I mean, people will look at it whatever way they look at it. They will look at it and say, "Hey, you should have told you." You had three people test positive. It'll be interesting to see if anybody else tests positive. That's how some people will look at it for sure, and that's definitely a very valid way. So I'm hoping that nobody else tests positive and this doesn't turn into a breakout thing. And I'm also hoping that the UFC isn't trying to silence people who may be, you know, certain things may have happened there. I'm also hoping that that doesn't happen. So we'll see overall how this whole thing goes. But it was an enjoyable card to watch. Definitely, like I said, missed sports a ton, missed combat sports. Period. I mean, I think I would have watched, a big wheel race at this point. I'm just, just was kind of wanting to see fighting period. Just want to see sports, period. So, I appreciate everybody who tuned in to watch this recap. Put this together so that we could just kind of go over UFC 249. We got another card coming up later this week. Later this week at this point. And so we'll be going over that and covering the fights there as well. As always, I appreciate you watching. God bless and peace.